want me to come get you? I'm having fun here. You're good. So we're
And then yeah, just every once in a while check participants, and if someone pops up, you just admit them.
Yeah. So
He has to do work.
yeah.
Schools. Aiding for the intellectual
It's
curious
okay.
society. Why would you want to?
I know.
There's water over there.
High schools, no. College visit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see all the water. Well, I mean,
I'm just-
college actually.
I'm sure we can
I'm not
refill
that
it.
smart. That's what I mean.
There's no problem with college. Is that, and I'm not gonna name my professors, but I don't know how many professors, but all they did was sit there. One in particular,
Yeah, I mean.
for American Lit 2,
Oh no.
who is now deceased, and God rest his soul.
Whatever.
I hope he's over
Whatever.
there, you know,
Phenomenal,
but,
though.
awesome. But all he did was sit there. I love the man, but he just sat there and read for 15 minutes.
Oh no.
I was like, I read the book, bro. I know what to do. I mean,
I had a professor in college and he sat in the front and he had us work in small groups the entire time. Never lectured, never talked to us at
I
all.
wouldn't like.
And
No.
never actually graded the papers. All we got back was like A or B or C.
Yeah.
And never any feedback. And I was like, wow, what are you doing?
how do you fix?
Wow.
No feedback is pretty. They just give you an F and they're like, lol,
Look, plenty of feedback.
lol.
Plenty of feedback. No, just check. We get plenty of
Well, you know,
Yeah.
one cool one, figure it out.
I mean, it
It's
worked
like
for
a-
us, so.
Yeah, I'm doing the exact same thing. Last year, 90%.
Why would you not write
is this the person who we're not recording?
This kid is not writing these things, bro.
It was the junior
Oh,
taking senior level.
That's gotta be Woods
Oh, no.
Yeah, it has to be.
paper. That's gotta be Woods paper.
Boy, think about it, you were in my class twice last year.
I'm pretty
You were in my
lucky.
class
Oh,
twice,
no.
not last year.
Yeah, no.
I was AP Money in
saw that.
No, I'm saying as a word.
Yeah.
Well, I was an honorary honor. So it's
Yeah.
not-
Honorary. Well, I was in fishing.
I used to just sit around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there was nothing.
we used to
No.
just, we used to just sit around in your
I'm
class.
too much of a control.
So,
I think you made me grade like 2 things and there were multiple choice and that was it. I
No.
just sat down.
Because there is no.
I would just read more. The multiple choice was horrible.
It's not the last one,
Yeah.
because you're gonna start
he
talking.
would not.
Me talking.
I want to
You're not
grade essays.
like-
So that was one thing I did jot down. I'm not used to talking for only 30 minutes. I have 2 equations. Our classes are 95 minutes.
Oh.
And we're bell to bell. That's why I come home and never talk. Whenever I get
Yeah.
home.
We'll make sure that they didn't know.
Of course.
Starts asking questions, okay?
Hey, Chef, just quick question.
Yeah.
No. 30 minutes. Trevor has 30 minutes to do his presentation. That's it. Y'all are gonna.
Oh, no.
We're
How
gonna
long
get
does he
blitzed.
talk? A lot.
Yeah. No.
Like bell to bell, a long time.
But here's the good thing is my voice can rest tomorrow because Lane 1 and 3 have their first true synthesis.
Let's go.
Oh,
Say.
okay.
And then
Let's go.
Lit has their stranger.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Camel,
sir.
camel,
So
camel.
yeah, tomorrow is, all right, guys, any questions? We got 40 minutes, go. 45 minutes. We're gonna see.
You should tell us how many people
They
get
ask,
fives.
they ask questions.
How many fives are you?
They ask questions.
Oh, very much so.
Good.
Oh, they do.
Yes.
That's great.
That, what we did something different because there were a lot more. And I know you 3 were in there, so sorry, I know.
Wow.
Yeah,
Forrest, you got 2?
Whatever.
2?
Sorry.
No. 25? 25?
What? You're done. If I had that number one more
All right,
time.
all right, let's
swear
just,
to God.
ready for this? Raise your hand if you got a problem with AP Lit exam.
Wow.
That was really lucky. I got a 4.
Raise your hand if you got a problem with AP Lit exam.
Okay.
I got a reason both those two. You did not get a 5. You did not.
Hey, don't lie. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well,
I got a 4 on that.
me too.
Yeah.
I got a 4 on the.
I'm not gonna lie, I was not
Well,
that shocked. That shocked. Because my phone, I kid you not, my phone is buzzing. It's not like my phone's going off for 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, 4 o'clock in the morning. Like Ava's sitting, you know, it's like everybody. I was like, oh my.
Ava
turn it
called
off.
me immediately and I'm still sleeping.
Yeah. She's
John,
like, holy.
you go to Parkview? You went to school, and, where'd you go to school again? Oh, yeah, you're from South Carolina.
Okay, I heard it was harder.
What sense?
Yeah.
No, I know.
We put other party people up here.
All right, well, let's begin.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday afternoon discussion in the Steel Center. It's good to see you all. And I'm Dr. Dow, Jamie Dow. I'm director of the Steel Center. I teach philosophy here. And I'm pleased to welcome Mark Shepard. Mr. Shepard, or I hear it's called Shep.
Mhm, yeah.
I've heard of you. I heard stories about you from first, I believe it was from Forrest, who was taking my existentialism and phenomenology class.
Yeah.
And Forrest mentioned you, and he said that you had him read The Stranger and Camus. And I said, Forrest, you know that was the first book of philosophy I read when I was in high school. And that's how I discovered philosophy, right? When you have this connection, right? And then I heard more stories about how you engage with students and got them to think about philosophy and got them to think about religious studies questions and think about deep questions. And I, at that moment, knew I immediately had to meet you and bring you to campus because this is great that someone in high school is teaching English, AP English, and teaching philosophy and religious studies. So thanks for being here, and let's give Mark Shepard a warm welcome.
Thank you. No, seriously, thank you. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. It's a privilege to be asked. And I'm looking around, and of course, I see my kids. I mean, it's one of the, whether that's good or bad is
What?
is
Wow.
one of them. But, let me go ahead and just say this. I'm an English teacher, not a philosophy teacher. I'm not a minister, but all that's incorporated. And it's kind of, we'll go through my 3 different classes. And I have taught everything from 7th grade level to 12th grade AP Lit, and everything and every reading style in between. I will say first and foremost that I am not used to, and they can attest, I'm not used to a 30-minute discussion. I will try to be brief. I will try to be concise, but I love to hear myself talk. That's one of those it is. And I don't know how to do it sitting down. I was seeing my ADHD. I'm used to a whiteboard, and the whiteboard is filled. It's one of those, I don't turn on the smart board. Nothing against it. Too much of a Luddite. I just, one thing, and when you said it to me, I said, how am I going to talk about this? How am I going to get into it? How are we going to start discussing religious studies? How are we going to discuss philosophy in the American high school? What am I doing? And how is that transcending once they leave, once they move on, once they evolve? And it comes back to the current political climate regarding education in the 21st century. About 9 years ago, I started hearing the word indoctrination. And it was not only in terms of what was going on in the classroom, it was national. And it was terrifying. And I jotted this down because I wanted to make sure that I commented. It's that trickle down effect. I know we start talking about economics, we talk about trickle down economy and what have you, but it's that trickle down from the legislature, from Arkansas, of individuals who are not educators, who are not in the trenches. Because as people can attest, in the American high school, you have everything from the most studious to the most apathetic. You have everyone who is engaged to everyone who is so insouciant. And it freaking terrifying. Because I was noticing this dumbing down of education. We were seeing the book bans, and this is even 10 years ago. I know it's pretty much ubiquitous now. We saw the book bans. We saw the one thing, and I think this happened when you guys were still there. We are required, maybe I don't want to step on any toes here, so I apologize if I do, but in each high school classroom, we have to have the "In God We Trust." So I put it up there, along with my Epicurus, that question, if God is this, then this, and it's one of the most famous ones for sure. And so I had those sitting up there. That just happened last year? Was it last year? We're seeing, of course, the outline of certain literary criticisms. And as a literature teacher, who I have a list of 10 books. Now, I'm an Americanist. Of these 10 books, these are 10 books that define the American experience. All right, whether it be poetry, which is, of course, my first love, whether it is the quintessential American novel, these are 10 books that define who we are as a people, whether we're looking of Native Son, whether we're looking at Leaves of Grass, whether we're running the whole gamut. And we're starting to see, okay, they're outlining certain schools of criticism. I will admit, in terms of literary criticism, everything I look through the lens of Marxism. All right, and they can pretty much attest. I talk about Karl Marx all the time. All right. So if we're looking at, but it was not just Marxism, it was a feminist crit. It was queer theory. It was CRT. All right. How do I teach Native Son without talking about critical race theory? How do I do Invisible Man? How do I do anything with Walt Whitman without talking about queer theory? How do I do The Grapes of Wrath? How do I do The Great Gatsby? How am I looking at some of these texts without doing Marxism? And I started looking at some of this one, this defines anti-intellectualism in America. It's pervasive. It was disruptive, and it was dangerous. And so I sat down with a few friends and one of my colleagues who just retired, and I said, I'm going to start changing my syllabus. And she was like, well, you need to go talk to Dr. Booth. You need to do this. You need to do this. And my response was, isn't it better to ask forgiveness than permission? And so I did. And noticing that my students, I started noticing that they were parroting very much so what they were hearing on the news, what they were hearing in other classes, what they were hearing however. And my job as a teacher, and hopefully those who have come before me, can say this is true, it's to make them think. I can, to quote Socrates, I can't teach you anything. I can only make you think. So I'm sick of watching my students who are going to take over when I walk out the door, regurgitate information. I have one student who's a grad student now at the University of Arkansas. He came back last year, maybe the year before, and he was like, Chef, your class was more than the lit classes up here. Because we did have those professors who sat there, and I know I'm doing a lot of talking right now, trying to get through everything before, who would just sit there and read. And the question was, yeah, we read the book. We know it. No, you assigned it. Why would you assign the book if you're going to go through and talk to us about it? That's what the shift went in. So it was about 10 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. And even in the last few years, it's been stepped up. A lot more so than when we saw a decade ago. There are 3 classes I teach, and I kind of want to go through and do it quickly, but here is how I introduce philosophy. Here is how I introduce religious studies in my classroom. First one is always AP Language. Everything goes back to AP English Language and Composition. It is my favorite class to teach. It is not the material that I love as much. Like I said, I love poetry. If I were to have that, hey, who could you have name 3 people you could have a drink with? It would be Jesus, Whitman, and Ginsburg. And those 3 people, maybe not in that order, just have the conversation, but it starts with it starts with language. Now, my syllabus changed exponentially over the first few years, but it was about 10 years ago, and they'll probably nod when we see this. First day of school, I get my syllabus. Just like every class, we go over it until we get to the last page. My syllabus is unfinished. It's always unfinished because I give a list, and I wanted to make sure I didn't miss one, but it begins with the unfinished syllabus, the standard syllabus up until the end, but then we start with the enumerated topics. And those topics are race, religion, philosophy, class, gender, history and politics, war and its effects, and then language and composition. And they create their syllabus. What they're most guided by, what they want to discuss. Because if they buy in, Now, here in the last 5 years, I've said, okay, throw philosophy out, because we're definitely doing a philosophy meeting. Throw philosophy out, throw language and composition, because that's the name of the class. We've got to do that. That's part of, if I'm looking at what College Board says, and then I'm gonna send you guys off when, you guys have all matriculated now, but before so, when we sent you guys off, it was, what are you interested in? And there was that ownership. And usually what it comes down to is religion. It's politics. It's history. Now, so that'll usually lead us up. First semester is very much so, here is the Bible according to College Board. Here's what we are going to do. We get into argumentation. We get into rhetorical analysis. That's part of my job as the English teacher. Everything changes 39 weeks. Following winter break, we dive into our philosophy unit. Now, you guys have all taken intro to philosophy. At this point, most of you have. So what we list here is, of course, just second nature to. However, most of my kids have never heard any of this. They've heard of Socrates. They very much so heard of Aristotle, because in the pantheon of rhetorical gods, Aristotle is who we go back to. I mean, Christ, we spend the vast majority of our time talking about the Aristotelian triangle. But coming back, we get into the major branches, we get into the major discussions. Now, since it is a language and composition course, our discussions usually end up leading us to the argument essays. Now, one example, because I tell them you cannot, and I know you guys still love the Hugo that we did. I have not done it since you guys, because that made me so unbelievably sad. But two, and I had one that I was going to, discuss with you guys, but H.L. Mencken said, the average man does not want to be free. He simply wants to be safe. Discuss the extent to which that holds true in the 21st century. And then, of course, there was one about the relationship of certainty and doubt and getting into it. We get into it. And, of course, spend about a week or so talking about epistemology, talking about metaphysics, getting into logic, getting into ethics, getting into the political philosophies, and breaking them down and talking. It's maybe about 3 different classes. I mean, it's just of what that intro semester of intro to philosophy would be. We're narrowing it down to about 3 days. Some of our readings, very much so. Start off, because I know where they're going senior year. We always start with, of course, the myth of Sisyphus. And not just the myth itself, but of course, we start looking at that point right at the beginning and spend on the absurd reasoning, absurdity and suicide, spend probably about 2 weeks talking about that introductory paragraph. Now, there is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Now, let me tell you, as a public school teacher, that's touchy. There is a lot of kickback. There's a lot of pushback. I have yet to have a parent complain. Not saying it's not going to happen, but we haven't had it. We also look at anti-intellectualism in America. America needs its nerds. If you have not read that essay, if you took AP Lane, you probably wrote a paper on America needs its nerds. If you have not, let me suggest go home and read it and watch the news right after. And if this is not true, then I don't know what else to tell you. We look at John Stuart Mill's condemnation of Jeremy Bentham. We do David Foster Wallace's This Is Water. We look at the case for torture. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we're introducing. Now, I've gotten to the point lately, I'm not doing as much This Is Water, because I'm like, if you want to read This Is Water, just read Sisyphus. And I love David Foster Wallace. Don't get me wrong, I mean, it was, a great guy, but go back to the myth itself. This culminates, of course, with AP exam in May. And hopefully, by the time we have journeyed together, once they get there, it's not about the score. I keep telling they don't believe me, but it's not about the score. It's about the journey. It's about the discussion. It isn't. Now, don't get me wrong. Numbers are great. I like the numbers. It looks good for me. When I'm getting called out at faculty meeting for my AP Lit numbers last year, and I'm having to stand up and take a bow, and I was like, it's not them at all. It was always me. They couldn't do it without me. I told you I'm not narcissist. I know you're like, yeah. You guys have no clue. I'm trying to, since I'm on television, trying to keep at least PG something. Of course, while other students have this, they're gonna have me at a later time anyway. It's not about the test. I know that they want to be exempt from comp. I know they want to be exempt from comp 2. I know that this is important on the grade and the score that each public high school gets. But I want to be able to see you in 20 years having a discussion. I want to see you at the local watering hole, buy you a beer, and say, hey, let's talk about thought. Let's have this conversation. Let's put our phones down, said about it. Let's put our phones down and let's just talk for a little bit. Now, the beauty of that is that's their junior year. Now, up until last year or so, I rarely taught AP Lit because I don't like seniors. God talked me into it last year because I really don't like seniors. But last year I had a phenomenal group, so I was like, you know what? Okay, Mr. Henderson, Miss Bill, whoever the principal was at the time, I shall acquiesce and I will take an AP Lit if I have a choice as to who comes in my class. I did not get everybody I wanted in the right week or twin.
Wow.
I'm gonna say, call it out on the board. But I had a great group of kids last year that taught me as much as. Now, I took another one this year. That was not the same. I do love my seniors from last year. The first semester is a traditional AP Lit class, all right? And we do a lot of poetry. We did fairy tales. I mean, we started talking about the first thing they read was Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah.
And then we read a graphic novel and I had to find a red pen for when we're talking about menstruation and this, that, and the other. And I knew my boss was going to walk in at any moment and he was going to show me the door. But the first semester is usually the traditional AP Lit course in a way. Now, yes, we introduce literary analysis, short stories, poetry, heading into, I always do The Great Gatsby, just because it's a great book. But we introduce those various schools of literary criticism again. Like I said earlier, we're talking Marxism, queer theory, CRT, gender studies. Now, I don't know how to teach Gatsby without talking about those four. I can't do it. It's impossible. How do I discuss the Valley of Ash in now, if you have not read The Great Gatsby, the greatest paragraph in American literature, take that back, the greatest 4 paragraphs. The first paragraph of the second chapter, and then the last 3 paragraphs of the book. It is the most touching. It's not the greatest novel, but those are the 4 great paragraphs. If they do not move you and damn near move you to tears, you're dead inside. But I don't know how to do it. I mean, I'll sit there and talk about, and he'll draw pictures on the board. And then, of course, we're quoting Marx. The history of all hitherto, it's on the board, and we're walking in and we're doing the compare and contrast between this and that. And how do I do that? How do I talk about the end of chapter 2 without talking about queer theory? I mean, when we start talking the importance of the ellipsis in the end of chapter 2. Now we're talking about, of course, the fragment that you guys have all read Gatsby, right? Anybody not read Gatsby? Oh, you have not read Gatsby. Oh my God, that's your homework. Do I?
I had Wallace and then in senior year I had Johnson.
Oh, you're a Parkview student?
Yeah.
Well, hello. Do I know you? Have we ever, what's your name?
My name's Molly Mitchell.
Hi, Molly Mitchell. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And we're in Henderson. I never, so you had Miss Wallace for AP Lit.
I had Wallace for AP Lane and I had
That's what I'm saying.
Johnson for regular English.
Why don't you not take AP Lit? You could have been in my B3 class. You would have gotten
I
qualified
was
score.
about to.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna have a couple more, but then they dropped me out of those classes.
All right, do you have homework tonight?
Do I have homework?
Yeah, do you have homework tonight? What you need to do is go by the library. Get a copy of The Great Gatsby. Tell me the first 2 chapters. I want you to shoot me an email. And then we were like Skype. I don't even know how to do that. I'll have somebody listen to the sound know what it is. Or just like, I'll just take a picture of my board. My board is good. I have a picture. I'll show you after class. I have a picture of my board from this year. I think it was about Jefferson, and I think it may have been with the strainer. We'll talk later. It's nice to meet you. Read Gadsby. For the love of God, read Gadsby. How do I talk about it?
I've read Gatsby, but it's been a long time. Can you remind me what happens in
Chapter 2. All right. See if I can say rote memorization now. About halfway between West Egg and New York. As a desolate area of land. This is a valley of ashes, a fantastic farm. Basically, read the book. Oh my God, it's so good. If not, then you just, don't ever talk to me. No, I have a copy somewhere.
She's read it. She needs you to remind her about chapter 2.
It's just about where we meet Myrtle before they go to New York. Wood Wilson, the garage.
Oh, yes.
It's okay. Fine, read it. That's your homework.
I'm sorry.
Homework,
I wasn't
right here. All right. How do I do without, think about chapter 1. How do I teach without talking about critical race theory? How do I do this without talking gender studies or feminism? How do I do it if I'm not talking about these things? Now, of course, inevitably somebody will walk in the door from the State Department, and I'm going to be fine. Because whenever we're talking critical race theory, it is across the board. If I'm going to get fired, I'm going down. And blame. But we also, in that first semester, talk about the greatest short story ever composed, A Clean Well Lighted Place. You ever read A Clean Well Lighted Place? I know you guys have.
Yeah.
You've not read it? Homework right there. Also, if you're doing it, here's where we're bringing in religious studies as well. If you read A Clean Well Lighted Place, you also have to read Song of Solomon, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes. You can't understand it without. So, got 4 books tonight. Hey, think about the beauty. There's 66 in here. I'm only assigning 3. But we know that. Of course, we're talking about Hemingway because as Hemingway is a novelist, he was good. Hemingway as a short story artist was great. Just like I know that there's that discussion between who's better, Hemingway or Faulkner. If you like the superfluous comma, then go with Faulkner. If you like art, you're going Hemingway. We also talk. I told you never mind. Also, in terms of that, bringing in the religious studies, we've got to talk about Ecclesiastes 1:2. If you're talking there, and yes, we start off King James Version, and I'm going to get to my Bible as literature, but of course, most of us don't use vanities of vanities. Said the preacher, vanities of vanities. All is vanity. Nobody does that. So, all right, you have your phones, you guys are connected to them anyway. So, go to the most recent translation. What does vanities mean? And it means meaningless. Meaningless, says the teacher. Meaningless. All is meaningless. We take Ecclesiastes 1:2, and then we go to Ecclesiastes 1:18 and start talking about knowledge. And that knowledge itself, as Solomon, the wisest man ever, said, was problematic. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increases knowledge increases sorrow. And of course, inevitably somebody's going to bring out, the notorious B.I.G. We're going to do some, I love it when they call me Big Papa, and of course have the conversation about more money, more problems. Usually it's either David or Forrest or saying that rapping, which is, oh my God, you've never seen me dance. It is worth it.
Wow.
David's going to break out right now.
Wow.
Now, we also discussed, and this is just because.
Do you dance first?
He does.
No, he doesn't.
What are you talking
No,
about?
he doesn't. I was at
I've
prom.
seen.
No, he doesn't.
No, that doesn't count.
I thought he was 17. That was nervous.
No, that wasn't. Okay.
I got nervous. I had nurse Rice on the phone. I'm like, can you come down? Someone was telling me what force already. Was that 106 when he was
Yeah.
switching? Right? That was not dancing. I mean, I can't dance either, but you know what, I don't. We also, of course, with the curriculum in place,
Alright.
if you have never read it, go home and read it, but we discuss Hemingway's bastardization of the sacred. And most of them get the Lord's Prayer. But they also forget, well, he's quoting two different prayers. He's going from the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, there, yada, 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 yada. But he's also moving into the Hail Mary. Hail Mary, full of grace, where we see the Hail Nothing, full of nothing. And we start talking about nothingness. We start talking about meaninglessness. That right there is kind of where we end the first 9 weeks, because after we get back winter break, we go straight into the stranger. And I didn't feel like taking these out of my books, my bag, so there they are. Most of the class had an IEP Lane class. So I don't have to spend the time going into their, here is what epistemology is. Here is, we get into it and start focusing on literature that focuses on meaning, literature that focuses on existence, our place in the world. And of course, we do have to start with, here's existentialism, and we start, bringing in some Kierkegaard and whatever, just various texts before we get into, okay, this is absurdism. This is nihilism. Where do we see the shift? And some of the texts that we do, and I've got to get to these, I'm behind this year, but The Stranger. We go back to the myth of Sisyphus. There, my class over winter, over spring break, they have to read Waiting for Godot. We do The Hollow Man by T.S. Eliot. Any fans of Eliot in here? Nobody's raising their hand. Has anybody read T.S. Eliot? The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock? Yeah. Let us go then, you and I. You guys haven't done it? Homework, yet again. You need to read The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. I mean, we read, of course, Stephen Crane. All right, A Man Said to the Universe. We coupled that back here. We read the book of Ecclesiastes. Example, tomorrow, when I get to work. Now, it's a good thing that tomorrow is not a lecture day, because first block, third block, they're writing their synthesis for AP Lane. Second block, and that's what I'm doing when I leave here tonight, because I'm writing some essay prompts over The Stranger. And then, of course, they're reading it out. And then, of course, that usually bleeds into the fourth 9 weeks. Fourth 9 weeks, have to do the drill and kill. Have to go back and here's what we write all the time. But it's always discussions. It's always something we see. Now, if I ever give up AP Lit again, I'm starting my book club. And book club itself will be books that I love. Of course. I mean, it's we read American Psycho. It was in in my AP Lit class, they had their own book.
Oh,
And they have to do a reading. So what did you guys do?
I did The Handmaid's Tale.
Handmaid's Tale, 1984. Blue Sky. This year, a different Kamanga read American Psycho. We talked to you guys about. Mark was just, he's got an essay tomorrow. Telling him that's in a text. Yeah, but I mean, we spent talking about the first, probably before you get to the text itself, talking about the descent into hell. Now we look at Dante. So we're bringing in Dante, how Dante descends into the pits of hell, versus how does Patrick Bateman descend into madness. Let's start looking at that. If we do it next year, probably, because I don't know, how many do I have?
Right now, we need 7.5 sections of AP Lane.
So it looks like I'll be
Teach
teaching
6.
mostly Lane next year. Or I'd take how many?
We'd like to give you one for chosen.
You send the special because
I'm
What?
I don't make sure
No.
Sorry,
Wow.
I love you.
Wow.
I really do.
I think it was David's fault. He didn't take her.
Yeah,
Lit class.
I think it
It
was.
was your fault.
Wow.
What did you have?
We couldn't. He got his feelings hurt.
No, wait.
All right. Now, the last class I teach in my Bible is that's pretty self-explanatory. How we introduce religious studies in here. I do spend the first 2 days talking about. Notice the title of this class. This is not Sunday school, And so I've got probably, let's say 20 sign up for Bible. After my first 2 days, I'm down to 15.
They don't read, it's Bible as in.
Yeah, and so it's one of those where they come in and they think it's gonna be the St. Mark's. They think it's gonna be Second Baptist. They think, and I'm like, no, this is a literature course. It's a detailed explanation, and I love the class. But it's a literature course. I am a literature teacher. That's what I do. Now, some of the topics we discussed. Evolution. I think if you read Genesis 1, and you look at, here's where the literature, or I'm sorry, the lame guy comes in. Look at conjunctions. Look at the conjunctions that are used in this translation. And we don't do NIV, we don't do the Living Bible. Look at the conjunctions in terms of a crescendo until we get to the conjunction so, because everything is and you see that trajectory up until we hit the apex, which is so. What is created with so? Humanity. And so on the first day, and it just rises. And you would have to have somebody have to double check me, but I want to say it's Genesis 1:1 to Genesis 1:26, maybe 27. And every single verse begins with and until we get to that point. We also, of course, talk about archetypal approaches. We talk about the search for meaning in a meaningless world, going back to this sense of absurdism. We look at the rhetorical situation, of course, the Aristotelian triangle, bringing it into it. Once we're talking about the Gospels, Matthew was written for a group of people. Mark was written for a different group of people. Luke, John, the same way. Let's talk about this in terms of rhetorical analysis. We talk about biblical poetry and bring it back to T.S. Eliot. Bring it back to we talk about Jesus as the great philosopher. And so as we're looking at this and we're bringing all of this, we read damn near anything that Whitman writes. We'll read damn near anything that Ginsburg writes. Maybe not everything, some stuff. Even I'm not that brazen to get fired on that. But that's pretty much it. I mean, this course is a semester, so of course there's 66 books. I can't get into all 66 books. I make sure to hit the first 5. I make sure to hit the books of poetry. I make sure to hit the books of Solomon. I hit the Gospels. I hit a little bit of Acts because I find the history interesting, especially when we get to the Jerusalem conference and start looking at the creation of Christianity, we're talking decades after the death of Christ. And then, of course, we get to Revelation. And it usually ends with Revelation and Childish Gambino's This Is America. And we kind of cover it. Now, second semester is mythology. And not that I don't enjoy mythology, but if something's got to bleed over, it bleeds well into the mythology course. And I usually do. Now, I did write down final notes, final thoughts, because I am trying to respect your time. 19 years ago. I don't know, me respect, but because I can go on. We can get a copy of the book out and go to the chapters, but 9 to 10 years ago, I revamped my curriculum. So far, it seemed to work. So far, I think it made me a better teacher. It made me when I finally said, you know what, I understand that what they're doing downtown is negatively affecting my kids in 7106, negatively affecting my kids in 106. It seemed to work. Hopefully I'm sending you guys thinkers. That's my, that's the thing, is instead of sending you minions that are just going to parrot and puppet what their teacher said, hopefully they get up here and have some damn deep thoughts and just have discussions. I don't know if that's what you guys wanted. I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but this is me. All right. Woo!
Well, I want to start by saying thank you for what you do, because the students that, when I start the semester, I'm always like, have you studied philosophy? And not a lot of people say yes, right? Because not a lot of people do in high school. And then the students that came from Parkview that were in my class, I was like, oh, they did. And they do well. And then we're like, oh, we're going to talk about existentialism. Oh, I know about that. So, I mean, there is a sense in which it would be nice if more did what you did.
No, I do pretty much. I tell them when you get to college, first class you take is an intro to philosophy course. Before you get there, you got to go buy Bertrand Russell's The History of Western Philosophy. I don't care if you read all 500 and some pages, just have it there. It's a good jumping off point. So.
Questions?
Yes.
Do you receive any pushback from people?
No, I mean I haven't yet. To tell you the truth, I mean I taught 2 superintendent's kids. I think I've taught 2 superintendent, 3. I'm looking at you. You know, 3 principals, assistant principals. I haven't. I mean
I think
I
it's
don't-
because you do it with grace. You do it with, they're allowed to not agree with you. Your kids are allowed to argue with you.
Mhm.
You're not trying to make them believe what you believe.
but because that's scary. Last thing we need is another shepherd. Just holy
Yeah.
shit.
Excuse me.
I mean, I've already got one, my daughter is a junior, will be a junior next year, and
Stop.
she has pretty much told me that she will not take my AP Lang class. She's not taking my Bible class. She is not a humanities person.
That's not true.
Yeah, she's done some great readings in Mr. Murray's class,
I
but
think she loves the humanities. I don't think she wants her daddy. I think she has seen how you helped Lucia and Forrest and David. Oh, you really did help
not at all.
that.
Wow.
That was nice. She paid attention, so you didn't have to.
Usually it was like on the floor with her back to the wall. I mean, I like look over, yeah, she's still with us. Yeah, so I'm just shout
Other
out. You don't have to raise your
questions?
hand. I don't, you know,
I'm
do
curious
hand raising.
as to how you choose the philosophy, like schools of thought, or the books that you choose to present in your class. Is it just stuff that you have like a personal connection to, or do you have like a process where you go through and review and look at like what this is doing versus what this is doing?
I read just, it's a great question. A lot of it is, when I go back to the traditionals, that Beth Greenway probably introduced me to, years ago. Yeah, I think a lot of it's what I enjoy, what I want to discuss. Some of it is I just read a book called The Coddling of the American Mind. And there was a quote by Epictetus that I had never heard. I mean, I've heard of the philosopher. I've studied the Stoics and what have you, but I had never heard this. So I sat there and I was in my classroom and I didn't have a pen, which is usually shocking. Grabbed my phone, yes, I do use technology, and took a picture of this book. And a lot of it is, I read a lot. There's always about 3 books going at any given time. I've always said I don't trust, no offense, if you're not a reader, not no judgment. I don't trust people that don't read, especially adults. If I ask you what you're reading and you have to think about it, that's a problem. So right now, and it doesn't have to be, of course, the most cerebral. I'm reading a book right now on behind the scenes of Jeopardy. And then I'm going from that, and of course, reading The Stranger and Waiting for Godot, because it's a lot of times just not only what I'm interested in, but what are the kids, how the kids are going to respond? And am I going to get pushback from the kids? I want to have these arguments. Let's have a discussion that's probably going to offend, and then let's have some civility in discussion. At least the last 20 years, it seemed to work so far. Yeah.
Is there one class or subject that you haven't taught that you wish you could or hope to?
You know what it is.
I'm in a process right now. It's mental. I'm writing a class for protest literature, and it's going to be from Thomas Paine to Tupac, and it's never. In the current climate right now, it's the Arkansas Department of Education. I would be surprised if they allow me to do it, but I'm gonna say I would love to do that. It's not in the books. I'm trying to think if there's something in the high school arena, because I'm a high school teacher. I enjoy high school. I have no interest in, I don't want to be a college professor. I just, it's
Come
what.
on.
I don't wanna do it.
Oh.
I don't wanna do it because I mean, the person that changed me the most was my AP Lit teacher, Beth Greenway. And I have no idea where she is. Hopefully she's still walking the earth somewhere. And I loved don't get me wrong, I loved my professors. I mean, I went out for drinks with them. I mean, just one of those. But it was the high school. So I really don't know if there's a class. Part of my charity pick and choose what I do. So I mean, I taught seventh grade pre-AP, eighth grade pre-AP only for 2 years, and I was about to
Cause
teach.
he loved
I was about to teach. It was one of those where I was like, I will go back to Sling and Lose and die before I walk back into a middle school. And I taught ninth grade pre-AP, 10th grade pre-AP, and I taught 10th grade level, 11th grade level 1 year, 11th grade pre-AP, AP Lang, Bible as literature, mythology, AP Lit, AP Lit. Anything else I taught? Contemporary American Lit. I did write a course when I was at Mayflower, where everything that is American literature is a conversation with Walt Whitman, circa 1855. That there is no art after that. We're like, well, what about the Harlem Renaissance? What about the beat movement? I love the beat movement, but I mean, there's a reason that Howell is Howell. He could have just called it barbaric y'all. Well, I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, there's really, I mean, I don't have. Yes.
So I was thinking about what you said in terms of like asking forgiveness. And I kind of want to hear your thoughts because it's just like something that surprises me. Wording through theory in high school would have like genuinely changed my life, and it's like not something I would have thought possible in Arkansas high schools. And so like I don't know, I'm a politics major, and I like hearing stories of like queer professors, Black professors, like getting problematized and targeted for just showing like Disney movies with like white queer representation. So I'm wondering if maybe you like talk a little bit about how you think you have like privilege and like how you present an identity and like maybe get away with things more.
I think a lot of it comes down to Parkview. If I was at any other school, if I was not in Little Rock, Arkansas, I taught in Mayflower High School. And this is not to lambast your friend right down the road, your city right down the road, but I taught there and I was demonized for suggesting a Young Democrats club. I got a class, a substitute to watch my 9th grade class, and I co-taught with the civics teacher. And we had discussions and was pretty much booed. Am I privileged? Of course I'm privileged. I mean, I don't think there's no other way to discuss it. I mean, as a heterosexual white male in the South, yes, very much so. But the diversity that is Parkview, I think allowed me to have those discussions, have the discussions about race, because I'm in a class of 30. I mean, I'm just thinking about my AP Lit class this year. I've got that I know of a lot of diversity. A lot of diversity. So yeah, I mean, I think that the privilege is there. I think if somebody from the State Department walks in, my ass is probably gone. And that's something I'm willing to do because I think proof is here that it works. Proof is here that it's a safe space. You walk in 106, the discussions are going to be there. It's going to be offensive at times, especially whenever I start talking about capitalism and I really get into demonizing Walmart and the Waltons and charter schools and private schools. No offense to Hendricks. I love private school, but I'm saying whenever I get on my soapbox, I mean, yeah, there's a good chance I'm going to get. I haven't yet, and I don't know if it's because either the people that are coming into my classroom agree with me, or they're not really paying attention and they're just checking boxes. They can look around my classroom, and the first thing they see is like the big "Stay Woke" poster. It's up there. I mean, it's just. I don't know if again that answered your question.
I have a follow-up.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering if you've like experienced or noticed like other teachers being targeted. Can you talk a little about that?
The only teachers who are really targeted at our school that I've seen are the far right. And I hate to be that guy. I'm the bully too sometimes on some of those individuals, some of those discussions. I know I am. It was something that I try, not with my students. My students is like, okay.
Bullying is bad.
Bullying is very bad. But we have a teacher that was right next door to me that we moved him away from the hallway because,
No way.
yeah, the guy that was right beside me,
He's
Yeah,
gone.
just-
He's
he's
down the
gone,
hall.
really.
Oh,
not gone, huh?
I'm talking about,
I can't say his name. It's being recorded. Of course, it's confident, except for everybody that's on, no, I mean, I think that, yeah, hopefully, hopefully the administration, assistant principals, principals are aware of what's going on, and then it works. And so if they just come in and sit down without their checklist, just sit down, listen, see what the kids are doing, learn something. Stay for more than 5 minutes, stay for a full hour, stay the whole class, interject, get into the discussion. And then if you want to write me up after that, write me up. Yes.
I do have something I want to say just because, so like, I'm gonna, I guess, in terms of, I used to be an AP Lit student as well, but not AP Lit just because schedule problems. Anyways, so, how do I start this? So when you introduce, I guess, philosophy and, multiple ideas into the class instead of just be like, okay, and get ready for the AP exam, we're gonna learn to write like this way and that way. Do you see, like, I guess I'm gonna ask from your AP Lang class, because they're like the first AP in English. So that's when they actually start trying to write like literary analysis or was it like the rhetorical, like this stuff like that. I don't really remember what it is. But when you look at their papers and you grade them and you see how they discuss over the years from the first day to the last day, do you see them, talking more? Because philosophy is all about talking. I mean, like you got it. If you sit there, you don't really do anything. Do you see them be able to express their ideas more, have better complex thinking, or in their papers you can see that it's a lot more elevated? Because I feel like coming from a place where you kind of like write a certain way and then you're gonna get like this kind of score, it's more versatile to be able to be taught how to think and write in a way that express your own feelings in it and put like different ideas in it. So do you see that like kind of like shift or improvement?
Yes and no. I mean, it's hard. It depends. I mean, it's the student. I tell them every day, every year. If you do what I tell you to do, the AP exam will work itself out. If you follow and we just get into it, that AP exam is going to work. I can give you, like take AP Lang. I can give you tools for the synthesis. It's a research paper. I can talk to you about the rhetorical analysis. It is, hell, let's start on the basic level. Here's the rhetorical phrases. This is what, let's just plug it in. We get to question 3, and now we're talking about argumentation. If you don't know the world, then I can't help you. So you got to buy into it. You've got to pay attention in your chemistry class. You got to pay attention in your A-push class. You got to pay attention to current events and what you learned years ago, because if that's the case, then we start having discussions. Prime example, my A1 class from the this year. From the moment we got there, I mean, they were meek. I mean, just very timid. Now I can't shut them up. It's just I hate it. It's organized chaos in that class. The same way with my A4, same way with my B3. Now, my B1, standoffish. It's excuses of this, that, and the other. And so I will go in and ask the question. We started discussing, okay, let's talk about these. I mean, is there a God? And if so, what's she like? And just crickets. No conversation. And so of course then I have to start talking again. I think it depends on the student. I think it depends on the class. I think it depends on the familiarity of it. I think it still depends. Usually, like AP Lang that I've had in the past, yeah, very much so. Phenomenal discussions. And I had never done it until last year, but I see control of the class to let them teach a book. Because I've read The Bluest Sign. I know what I'm looking for. Deanna got up there and knocked it out of the park. I mean, it was one of those Forrest with 1984, Sia with The Handmaid's Tale. I mean, it was, let me sit back and let me learn. So I did it again this year with The Stranger. And I assigned a group. You have chapter 1, you have chapter 2. And some of the discussions we were having, I mean, I'm jotting down my notes going, I had never thought about that. Thank you for that, having a conversation. So yeah, when we started in August until the end of, middle of May, yeah, there's always growth. It doesn't matter the one, there's always growth. Whether it's translated on the test or not, can't help that.
I do want to add also, since you've been talking, I can see that these students are from Parkview, and I guess it's gonna be a compliment, and you are a narcissist, so I think
That's not say it out, Tom. Look at the camera. Like, I told you.
So from a class with having with these people, I have noticed that pretty much I've had Sia in my class, I had David in my TC, also Boris and Deanna in my chemistry class. Shout out to you. Class can become crickets when, people are kind of like, they don't know what to say. But these people always bring up really good discussions. When the class is really quiet, they do bring up stuff, and I have, heard that they are in like philosophy and stuff like that. So I mean, shout out to you. You did mold them into well, not mold, but like make them
You
see
are
how
my
they
baby.
think.
The microphone's down. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Yes. I started teaching at Parkview in August of 2010. So when I got there was no gray hair. I had a sliver right here. I blame them. Yes.
I'm wondering, when I teach philosophy, sometimes students are worried about having to read difficult texts. That's what I hear, that these are hard things to read. And there could be easier things that we could read. And so you're choosing to have them read more difficult texts, potentially, in a sense. And so I'm wondering, like, what can you say about the value of reading difficult texts? Interpret that however you want. Like, it's difficult to interpret. It challenges, makes us ask about suicide, right? It challenges deep assumptions. Like, what is the value of that for you and your teaching?
The world doesn't care. The world's indifferent. Why don't give a damn about us? It's going to take strong individuals who have the gumption. I know that, going back a few decades of that word. We need serious people to have serious conversations about serious topics. We are at a crossroad right now. And when it's one of those where, because I said this is hard to understand, read it again. Let's have this, it's what Camus is telling us. Yes. Why have we not? Because either one of three things is going to happen. We're either going to kill ourselves, we're either going to embrace the deity, or we're going to embrace the absurd. Where do you fall? Hopefully, it's not number one. But if we can question those and start having those discussions, we can demystify so much stuff out there that when I watch the news and I see this, I'm like, you know what? The world's not that bad. We can fix it. Why did I go into teaching? Of course, this is going to sound, a little pretentious, but it was to change the world, and I'm a public school teacher. My voice is out there. They walk out. We're going to, and not just in terms of the text itself, not the subject, but sometimes even let's talk about the English. I mean, reading Howell is exhausting. If you have gone through and never just sat there and read all four of those, you got to read footnote. Do not leave footnote out, because we'll talk about. If we're looking there, I got to read Whitman's Chanting the Square Diaphane. I've got to look at I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed. Let's have these conversations now, because I don't know where you're going to go after high school. Are you going to college, the military, going to the workforce? These are questions that, when I'm old, I feel comfortable that we've got smart people asking tough questions, and not afraid to have those conversations of getting together and talking. I don't know if that answers you. Yes, Sia, how's it going?
I'm good, how are you?
Doing well, man.
So one of the things he used to make us do was like read the news, like look at whatever was going on in the news, and he would quiz us on something that happened in the news, and it was really interesting.
Who's the Speaker of the House right now?
Not here.
Oh, a poker.
What?
Paul
Wait. Oh, wait.
You said
Paul
I think we should let this, I think we should let it be.
Please leave me alone. I'm sorry.
Hey, G.
It could not get worse. Oh, sorry. Okay, anyway.
Answer Mike Johnson. Who's my poli-sci person? Just there. Good job. I know you know it.
But I like, this is kind of a compliment to you, I guess. But when I started high school, I was so set on doing philosophy and then looking at political science, like looking at what was going on in the political climate. Now I'm doing both, like I'm double majoring in psychology and political science. Have you seen, like, the more you tell students to like watch the news, have you seen them start discussing it more and like kind of bring that up in class as well? Or is it
Yes and no. We had a discussion yesterday about ambush immolation. And it was, okay, yes, we'll talk about this. But yeah, I mean, just an act of showing videos from the 1960s. Let's talk about the Buddhist monk. But the question is, okay, well, number one, let's talk about why is it important this man's in uniform? Why is that significant? Not where it's done, but he's in uniform. Also, what does that say about us? About American voyeurism? We're watching this. What does that say about us and the ubiquity of technology and our addiction to technology? That the man set his phone down and we watch it. It's the car crash. So we had a great discussion in, which was a B day, right? Yeah, B3. And then B1, I was told, I don't watch the news because it's, there was something. I was like,
And that's why you don't want to.
and I was like, yeah, I mean, it was one of those, I'm like, I don't know what to help. I mean,
Yeah.
when they say support your assertion with readings, observations, and or experiences, how do you do that if you don't read? How do you do that if you're not experienced? How do you do that if you don't observe the world? Yeah, so when your one comes back, it's not on you. But no, I think like, to go back and I love my V2 class, not as much as I love you guys, but I love my AP Lit class. We've got some great discussions. I love my mythology class. We get some, my Bible class. Usually, they start questioning me. Well, Chef, what do you think about this? Well, I mean, of course, I got to play devil's advocate, which sometimes sucks because Parkview is a far left school, and so for me to play devil's advocate, what I'm saying is pretty much antithetical to what I'm thinking, but it's part of it. Yeah, usually just like with you guys, you come in, first few, it was crickets. You had no idea the world around you. And then by the time AP Lang or AP Lit or whatever it is, we're able to discuss things. You guys are the guys I would like to have a beer with 20 years down the road because you know the way. You're well ready. I'm a little kid, you're gonna be
David said 2 years.
2 years. All right, I'll let you buy.
Wow.
School teacher. Still,
College student.
we're on rations. College
College
student.
students, we're not any better.
Drink some light beer. Anybody else?
Anybody else?
All right, well,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Is there a certain kind of student you find has a lot of success, or maybe you just enjoy teaching more?
Yeah.
What about that?
They ask why. I mean, it's one. I'll say that I know there was a James Lipton show a few years ago, and it was the Inside the Actors Studio. I always watched. I mean, it was enjoying, but it was always one of those where here are James Lipton's 10 questions. You learn a lot about people in those 10 questions, and it was one of those where like, what's your favorite word? My favorite word is why. I love that word. I mean, it's a great word, but just the connotation of why. These are the kind of kids young adults, I apologize, I mean, adults, possibly 2 years. That ask why. I mean, that's one of those where, don't ever take me for being right. I'm just Tony Shepard. I read books, sometimes I regurgitate, I have my own opinions, my own feelings, but maybe I'm just talking. Sometimes I just talk to hear myself talk, and I see how far it goes and see how much they buy into it. But if they're asking why, if they're asking for support, those are the kids I enjoy having in class, and I'm lucky. This is no offense to any other high schools in the state of Arkansas, or somebody said South Carolina. Parkview is by far, hands down, the greatest high school in Arkansas. I have turned down jobs. I have turned down jobs in other places, other parts of the state, other parts of the city, to stay at Parkview. I believe red, white, and blue. We get the best of the best, and it's because of guys like you guys. That I mean, it's that one. There we go. Sit right there. Very good. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. Those are the kids that, or I also love that kids like, hey, Chef, did you see blank? Did you know blank? And I have no problem saying I did not know that. I've never read that. Let me talk about that. Those are the kids I enjoy. You know, there are other kids that we struggle sometimes, and it's pulling them along. But it's that, you know, the culmination is the journey.
All right, let's thank you. So much, everybody, for coming. And next week, spring break.